The air in Ridgeview was not just hot, it was wet and heavy, sticking to the skin like cheap vinyl. It was a place squeezed between two worlds, the refrigerated breath of the container port on one side, and the sweltering, identical driveways of working-class homes on the other. This summer, the air was also thick with rumors, layoffs at the port, shifts cut at the packing plants. The entire food supply chain had hiccuped, and places like Ridgeview were the first to choke. The sound that cut through the humidity was wrong for this neighborhood. It was not a struggling domestic engine. It was the deep, syncopated rumble of a state-of-the-art Italian V8 engine, a sound of aggressive wealth, the Maserati sedan, the color of a moonless night, slowed, its ceramic brakes barely whispering. He saw the girl first. She was standing on a patch of burnt grass by the sidewalk, next to a bicycle, a pink bicycle, with streamers, still shiny. She was small, maybe 6 years old. She held a cardboard sign, the letters drawn in crayon. Luca Romano let the car idle, when he was not supposed to be here, and he was supposed to be at the port, dealing with Victor Klein's latest logistical squeeze. But he had taken a detour, a habit from an old life, checking the boundaries of his territory himself. The girl, Lily, took a hesitant step toward the curb. The car's window was tinted, a black mirror reflecting her. She clutched the sign. Luca lowered the window. The oppressive heat washed in, carrying the scent of cut grass and distant diesel. He was 36 years old, and people who knew his name understood that he ran the quiet side of the port, the logistics that were not on any public manifest. He was, by appearance, a businessman, cold, expensive, and distant. The girl's voice was so small he almost missed it. "Sir," she was terrified, but she held her ground. "My bike is new. Please buy it." She took a tiny, sharp breath, pushing out the last part as if it physically hurt her. Mom's starving, 72 hours. Luca's blood did not run cold. It stopped. He looked from her face, pale beneath a light spray of freckles, to the bicycle. He knew that model. He knew the specific shade of candy pink. He knew the weave of the white basket. It was a Serafina limited edition. He had spent 3 months tracking one down for his own daughter, Sophia, years ago. The sight of it did not just open an old wound. It reached inside and pulled, a visceral tightening in his chest, a scar. Before he could form a word, a screen door banged open on the porch of the small rental house behind her. A woman stumbled out, Grace Carter, 28 years old, but today she looked 40. She was wearing scrubs, the pale blue kind worn by kitchen staff. "Lily," the woman whispered, her voice like sandpaper. "Get back here. Do not bother the man." She put a hand on the wooden railing to steady herself. Her knuckles were white. Then she swayed. It was not a dramatic faint. It was a quiet, undignified collapse, her knees buckling as her body, starved of sugar and fuel, simply shut down. She crumpled onto the dusty welcome mat. "Mommy?" The girl's shriek broke the spell. Luca was out of the car, his suit jacket unbuttoned before his feet hit the pavement. He moved with a speed that startled people, a predator's economy of motion. He was at the porch in 3 steps. The girl, Lily, was already there, trying to shake her mother's shoulder. "She's just tired," Lily said, tears welling, her voice cracking. Luca knelt. He put 2 fingers to the woman's neck. Her pulse was thready, but it was there. She was breathing. She smelled of bleach and industrial soap. Her skin was clammy. Hypoglycemia, starvation. The woman's eyelids fluttered. Grace saw a man in a dark, perfectly tailored suit looming over her. She saw his eyes, dark and unreadable. "Lily," Grace breathed, her voice barely audible. "Go inside. Lock the door." "No," Luca said. His voice was not loud, but it commanded the space. He looked at the girl. "Your mother needs food. I am taking you both to eat. Right now." He slid one arm under Grace's shoulders and the other under her knees. He lifted her. She weighed nothing. She felt like a collection of hollow bones. He carried her to the car, ignoring her weak protests, and settled her in the passenger seat. He motioned for Lily. "Get in the back. Buckle your belt." Lily looked at her mother, then at him, and obeyed. She had seen the look in his eyes. It was not kind. It was something else. It was definite. He did not take them anywhere near the port. He drove 5 blocks to a small dinette sandwiched between a laundromat and a check-cashing store. He carried Grace inside. The few patrons looked up, saw him, and immediately looked back at their plates. He put her in a vinyl booth, sliding Lily in beside her. A waitress came over, wiping her hands on her apron. "Coffee, black," Luca ordered. Then he looked at Grace, who was slowly regaining her senses, shame and confusion warring in her eyes. "Bring her a steak, medium, potatoes, eggs, and pancakes for the girl, a large stack, and 2 large glasses of milk." "I cannot," Grace whispered, her hand shaking as she reached for the glass of water the waitress left. "I cannot pay for this." "Eat," Luca said. "It was an order. We will talk after." He watched them. Lily ate with a frantic desperation for the first minute, stuffing pancakes into her mouth, before some learned manner kicked in and she slowed, cutting small pieces. Grace took tentative bites of the steak. With every swallow, color seemed to return to her face. She was a pretty woman, he realized, underneath the exhaustion, but there was a hardness in her jaw, a pride that had not broken. Even when her body had... When she had finished most of the plate, she finally looked at him. "I do not know who you are, mister, but I do not take charity." She fumbled in the pocket of her scrubs, her hands still trembling. She pulled out a small, folded wallet. It was empty of cash. Tucked into a side pocket was a folded piece of paper, a final notice from the electric company, bright red. "This is all I have," she said, her voice thick with humiliation. "I will get paid. I will find you, and I will pay you back. I just need time." She pushed the bill across the table as collateral. Tucked inside it was another paper, a pay stub. Luca picked it up. Klein Foods, Processing Division. He knew the name well. Victor Klein, a legitimate monster. A man who laundered money through a smiling charity called Klein Cares while squeezing the port for every dime. Luca looked at the pay stub. He saw the hours worked. He saw the gross pay. And then he saw the deductions. "They owe you 6 weeks, Luca said. It was a statement of fact." Grace nodded, her chin trembling. "They call it a payroll hold. For adjustments. They said I owed a uniform fee, a night shift differential, and a cold damage charge for a freezer I supposedly left open." "A negative balance," Luca observed. "Looking at the final number, they are saying you owe them money." "I did not do it," she whispered. "I would never. But they took my key card. They said it is temporary, until the investigation is done. But it has been 6 weeks. The food bank only lets you go twice a month. The fridge has been empty for 3 days. 72 hours. There it was again. 72 hours. Luca's phone vibrated in his jacket. He excused himself, walking outside into the suffocating heat. He answered. It was Elena, his right hand, the woman who ran his numbers and knew where every real and imaginary dollar was. "The Klein shipment," Elena said, her voice crisp. "No preamble. He's squeezing us on the cold storage dock fees. He claims spoilage, wants a new percentage. He's leveraging us. Luca." Luca looked through the dinette window. He saw Grace cutting the last piece of pancake for Lily. "He is washing money. Elena, through that Klein Cares fund. I know it." "We know it," she corrected him. "District Attorney Lowell is protecting him. It is a clean operation on paper. We touch Klein. Lowell touches us. It is a stalemate." "I want you to find out how Klein Foods processes payroll for its kitchen staff," Luca said. "Specifically, find out everything you can about cold damage fees." There was a pause. "Payroll, Luca. This is not our problem. This is a civil issue." "It is my problem now," he said, and hung up. He stood by the car, the engine ticking as it cooled. This was a distraction. It was a stupid, emotional detour. He should get in his car, drive away, and let Elena handle Klein the way they always handled men like him. With pressure, with leverage, with the quiet threat of exposure. He should give the woman cash, a few $1,000s. enough to fix her problems and disappear. It was one time a single act of anonymous help. But he could not get the image of the bicycle out of his head, the pink Serafina. The memory of Sophia was not a soft, sad thing. It was sharp. It was made of rage. His daughter had died from a fever that became an infection a specialist could have stopped. But the insurance company had denied the coverage, an out-of-network error, a clerical mistake, a denial. He understood this kind of theft, the kind that happened on paper, the kind protected by policies and procedures. Victor Klein and D.A. Lowell, they were a different kind of family, a more ruthless one. They used spreadsheets and legal funds as weapons. They did not break your legs. They starved you. They took your paycheck, your power, your dignity, and finally, your child's bicycle. The conflict was clear. It was the immediate, desperate hunger in that dinette versus the cold, impersonal, profitable machine that caused it. It was his own compassion, a thing he rarely indulged, versus the brutal rules of the world he operated in. He went back inside. The diner was quiet. He had already paid the bill, enough to cover their meals for a month. Grace stood up as he approached, her spine straight. She had her pride back. "I do not know your name, sir," she said. Luca Romano." "Mr. Romano, I appreciate the meal, more than you know, but I am not looking for a handout." Her eyes were clear, fierce. "I am looking for my wages, what they owe me. That is all." He stared at her. This is what made it impossible to walk away. She was not asking for charity. She was asking for justice. She was not asking him to be a savior. She was asking him to be a weapon. This changed the parameters. He could not just give her cash. He could not just rough up a payroll manager. She wanted what was legally hers, and that meant he could not use violence. He had to use the truth. He sat down in the booth, the vinyl sighing under his weight. He looked at Grace and then at Lily, who was carefully drawing a picture of a pink bicycle on a napkin. "I will not leave," Luca Romano said. His voice was quiet, but it filled the small space. A promise as solid and heavy as steel. "I will not leave until I know exactly who robbed you." He drove them home in a silence that was heavier than the humid air. Grace sat stiffly in the expensive leather, her hands clasped so tightly in her lap that her knuckles were white. She looked straight ahead, her profile a mask of determined pride. Lily, in the back seat, was quiet, her small fingers tracing the embossed logo on the seatbelt. When he pulled up to the curb, Grace turned to him. "Mr. Romano, He held up a hand. "Do not say thank you. You have nothing to thank me for. Not yet." He got out and opened her door, a gesture of old-world courtesy that seemed alien on this worn-out street. He walked them to the porch, stopping by the pink bicycle. "Do not sell this," he said. "It was not a request." "If she needs to eat," Grace started. "She will eat," Luca replied. He took a slim, black phone from his inside pocket. It was heavy, anonymous. "This is for you. It has only one number in it. Mine. Keep it charged. Keep it on you. I will call you with updates on my progress." He then handed her a plain white plastic card. It was not a credit card. It had no name, no numbers, only a magnetic strip. "This is a logistics card. It is tied to a corporate account. There is a grocery delivery service in my contacts. Order whatever you need. Food, soap, medicine, it is untraceable. And it is not charity. It is an expense. You are a consultant on an active investigation." Grace looked at the card, then at his face. She knew this was a fiction, a carefully constructed one to allow her to accept. A consultant. "You are the primary witness. I need you healthy. I need you focused." She took the card, her fingers closing over it. "Understood." He nodded, turned, and walked back to his car. The moment the heavy door sealed him inside, the mask of the calm businessman was gone. He made 2 calls before the engine even turned over. The first was to a man who managed his legitimate real estate holdings, 123 Sycamore, the property in Ridgeview. "It is a duplex. The owner is a man named Peterson. He's holding the note. I want you to buy it. Buy the entire building. I do not care what it costs. I want it done in 1 hour. The tenant in Unit A, Grace Carter, is not to be contacted by him for any reason. Her rent is to be frozen, indefinitely, pending a building-wide audit. Am I clear? He disconnected before hearing the reply. The second call was to his chief of security. There is a house at 123 Sycamore. I want a car there, 2 blocks away. Minimum, unmarked. I want eyes on the woman. Grace and the girl, Lily, they are not to be approached. They are not to be intimidated. They are simply to be kept safe. Anything that is not the mailman or a food delivery gets reported to me directly. And send a doctor, a family practitioner. I want him to make a house call. Check them both for malnutrition, tonight. He ended the call and finally drove away, the image of the pink bicycle searing itself into his memory. 2 days later, Luca was in his office, a sterile, soundproofed room of glass and steel overlooking the port. The only sound was the faint hum of an air purifier. Elena entered without knocking. She was the only one who had that privilege. She carried a tablet. "You were right to look at the kitchen staff payroll," she said. Her voice was flat, devoid of emotion. She was his auditor, his enforcer in the world of numbers. It is not just theft, it is systemic. She brought up a file. Klein Foods runs 2 sets of books. One for the State Labor Board, which looks perfectly clean. The second is internal. This is where the fraud lives. She showed him a series of accounts. When a kitchen worker is flagged for a violation, like your Grace Carter, her paycheck is diverted. It does not just stop. It goes into this, a suspense and adjustment account. It sits there, collecting. From dozens of employees, after 90 days, the money is moved, justified as operational losses or audit reconciliations. It is a slush fund. Luca, a very sophisticated one. "Thousands of dollars," Luca said, looking at the totals. "Tens of thousands. Every quarter," Elena corrected him. "But that is not the part that should interest you." She swiped to another file, the cold damage fee Grace was charged. I pulled Klein's internal maintenance reports and cross-referenced them with their insurance filings. 4 days before Grace was suspended, Klein Foods filed a major claim for spoilage in Freezer 4, a multi-ton loss of imported seafood. The power failed, Luca guessed. "It was shut off," Elena said, tapping the screen. "I pulled the energy grid data for that sector. It was a scheduled, intentional blackout for municipal grid maintenance. Klein was notified 6 weeks in advance. He was supposed to move his stock or use generators. He did neither. He let the product spoil. He filed a massive insurance claim for negligence that was not negligent. It was deliberate." Luca leaned forward. "So he gets a huge payout from the insurance company." "Correct. And to make it look legitimate, he creates a scapegoat. He blames a kitchen worker for leaving a door open, compromising the system. He fires her, and he steals her wages, and the wages of others, to cover any ancillary costs or deductibles. He is triple dipping. He steals from his supplier by letting the product spoil. He steals from his insurance carrier, and he steals from his employees, all at once." Luca was silent for a long moment. "It is efficient, and Lowell." "District Attorney Lowell," Elena said, a hint of distaste in her voice. "His re-election campaign received a $50,000 donation from the Klein Cares Foundation 2 days after he dropped a class action suit related to food safety violations at Klein's packing plant. It is a closed loop. Klein sells bad food, Lowell protects him from the consequences, and Klein launders his gratitude through his fake charity." It was dirty. It was standard procedure for men like Klein, but it still did not explain the sheer audacity of it. That night, Luca found himself back on Sycamore Street. The heat had subsided, leaving a cool breeze that smelled of the ocean. He found Grace on the porch steps, watching Lily draw on the sidewalk with a piece of new chalk. The girl looked healthier. The hunted look was gone from her eyes. Grace sent Lily inside to wash up for bed. When the girl was gone, Grace turned to him. She did not sit. She stood, her arms crossed. "The landlord called today. She said," he sounded terrified. "He said the bank was restructuring his portfolio, and that all rents were frozen for 90 days pending a review. He actually apologized to me. Luca kept his expression neutral. He was sitting on the porch rail. Banks are very unpredictable. And a doctor showed up. She continued, her gaze unwavering. A very kind, very expensive family doctor. He did a full workup on Lily. He left vitamins. He said his bill was being handled by an anonymous donor. There are good people in the world, Luca said. Stop it. Her voice was quiet, but it cut. Stop treating me like I am stupid. I know this is you. The rent, the doctor, the groceries that keep arriving. This is not logistics. Mr. Romano, this is something else. He looked at her. The porch light cast shadows under her high cheekbones. She was not angry. She was confused, and she was scared. Call me Luca, he said softly. He stood up, but he kept his distance. What I am doing is for my own reasons. It is true that your case has opened a door for me into Klein's operations. That is valuable. But the other things, the doctor, the food, that is separate. Why, she whispered. He looked away, toward the dark street. He thought about the pink bicycle, which she had dutifully moved inside the house. I had a daughter, Sophia. The name felt like glass in his mouth. She was sick once, a fever, the kind of thing that should have been simple. But the insurance company denied the specialist, a clerical error. They called it a data entry problem. He paused, the old rage tightening his throat. She died because of a policy adjustment. So, I do not like it when I see good people get crushed by paperwork. Grace's expression softened. She did not touch him. She just nodded, a shared understanding passing between them. I am so sorry. Luca. It was a long time ago, he lied. What about you cook? She leaned against the railing. I used to volunteer. After the storms, down south, I worked in a field kitchen. We fed 500 people a day on almost nothing. I loved it. Making something good out of chaos? I thought working for a big food company like Klein would be a real, stable job, a way to use my skills. She let out a short, bitter laugh. I was a fool. You are not a fool, Grace, he said. You're a cook. He's a thief. The system is set up for him to win. We are going to unset it. The space between them was charged. It was not attraction. Not in the simple sense. It was a resonance. Two people who had been betrayed by the systems that were supposed to protect them. Luca returned to his real world, the world of concrete and shipping containers. He was in his surveillance hub, a room dark save for the glow of 24 monitors. He was not looking at Klein's operations. He was looking for his rival, Salvatore Salvatelli. Sal was old school. Sal believed in dynamite and threats you could shout. Sal has been too quiet, Luca said to his port manager. Maybe he is retired, boss. Men like Sal do not retire, Luca murmured. They just reload. He was reviewing footage from a camera pointed at a diner 2 miles from the port, a neutral zone. He watched hours of useless footage until he saw it. A dark sedan he recognized. It belonged to Klein's head of security, a thug named Jarrett. Jarrett got out, carrying a heavy briefcase. He went inside. 5 minutes later, another car arrived. Salvatelli got out. He looked older, heavier, but his eyes were the same. Luca zoomed in, watching the silent, grainy pantomime inside the diner. He saw Jarrett slide the briefcase across the table. He saw Sal open it, look inside, and smile. It was a cash drop. All the pieces clicked into place with a sickening finality. Elena's words, Klein is squeezing us on the cold storage dock fees. He is leveraging us. The insurance fraud, the stolen wages. It was not just about profit. It was a war chest. Klein was too weak, too legitimate to fight Luca for control of the port on his own. He needed an ally, a predator. He had partnered with Sal Vitelli. Sal was funding Klein's corporate attack. In return, Klein was giving Sal a legitimate, protected channel to move his own contraband through the port, right under the nose of his puppet, District Attorney Lowell. Grace Carter's 72 hours of starvation was not an accident. It was the grease for the gears of a machine designed to crush him. Luca's throat tightened. This was not Grace's problem that he had decided to help with. This was his problem, and she was the first casualty he had seen. He had promised her he would find out who robbed her. It was a cartel of them. A corporate executive, a corrupt politician, and a rival mafioso, and they were all, in their own way, coming for him. The Klein Cares Foundation annual gala was not held in Ridgeview. It was held in the city, in a glass atrium overlooking the harbor, a building that represented a world of clean money and calculated philanthropy. The air was chilled, smelling of expensive perfume and imported lilies. Men in tailored tuxedos and women in silk gowns murmured over glasses of champagne. Luca Romano did not wear a tuxedo. He wore one of his dark, severe Italian suits. He walked into the atrium and the ambient noise of the room dipped. Just for a second. He was not one of them, and everyone knew it. He was the port. He was the shadow that made their logistics possible. He found Victor Klein by a towering ice sculpture of the Klein Foods logo. Klein was in his 50s, with a tanned, handsome face and the predatory smile of a man who had never lost. He was standing beside District Attorney Lowell, who looked like a politician sculpted from bland soap. "Mr. Romano," Klein said, extending a hand, his voice booming with false welcome. "What a surprise. I did not think this was your kind of event. I am here about a business matter." "Victor," Luca said, his voice low, ignoring the offered hand. The music, a string quartet, swelled and covered their words. Klein's smile tightened. "Business here." "This is a night for giving. We just raised over $200,000 for the city's underprivileged." "The same underprivileged you are robbing," Luca said. It was not a question. District Attorney Lowell stiffened, but Klein laughed. "You have a sharp wit, Luca, but your timing is poor. If this is about the new dockage fees, my logistics team is firm. We are paying for premium cold storage, and your facilities are not up to par." "My facilities are fine," Luca said. "Your accounting is the problem. You have a number of employees from the Ridgeview plant with payroll adjustments. It is causing unrest, and I do not like unrest near my port." Klein's eyes went cold. The mask of the philanthropist was gone. "Mr. Lowell, would you excuse us? I believe Mr. Romano and I need a private word about his port security." Lowell nodded, gave Luca a nervous, watery glare, and moved away. Klein steered Luca to a glass alcove, away from the crowd. The city lights glittered below them like a carpet of diamonds. "Let me be clear," Klein said, his voice dropping to a near whisper, all pretense of civility gone. "This is not your fight. This is business. You have been squeezing my margins on the refrigerated docks for a very long time. I am squeezing back." "You are stealing from your kitchen staff to fund Salvatelli," Luca said flatly. Klein did not flinch. He looked impressed. "So, you did your homework. That is good. It means you understand the stakes. Sal is an old world problem. I am a new world solution. He provides the muscle. I provide the clean, corporate face. And you, Luca, are in our way. Get to the point, Victor." "The point is that woman..." Grace Carter, Klein smiled. "A terrible situation. A single mother, struggling. It came to my attention she was part of an internal theft ring, stealing food. Can you imagine stealing from the very company that feeds her? A pity." Luca did not move. His face was stone. "It would be a tragedy," Klein continued, sipping his champagne. "With a criminal charge like that, she would lose her daughter. The state would have to step in. The girl would go into the system. And we all know what happens to children in the system." He let the threat hang in the air. "Or," Klein said, "a different possibility. You are a reasonable businessman. You cede the cold storage contracts, all of them. You walk away from Docks 4 and 5. You move your specialized logistics to the other side of the harbor, and this all goes away." Goes away. The internal review finds that Grace Carter was framed by a disgruntled manager. She gets her full back pay. With damages for her trouble, she keeps her job. She keeps her daughter. And you and I never have to speak again. Your problem is solved. Luca finally understood. It had never been about the few $1,000s she was owed. Grace was a pawn. She was the perfect leverage. Klein believed he had found Luca's one weakness, a conscience. He thought Luca would make a simple, cold calculation, the port or the woman. Luca looked at Klein's smug face. "You made a mistake, Victor." "Did I?" Klein scoffed. "I am holding all the cards. You use force. You go to jail. District Attorney Lowell will see to it. You do nothing. She goes to jail. It is a very simple choice." "You miscalculated," Luca said, turning to leave. "You think I am you. You think I will sacrifice her to protect myself. You are wrong." He left Klein standing in the alcove, the smile frozen on his face. Luca was back in his steel and glass office within 30 minutes. Elena was waiting. The blinds were down. "He threatened the girl," Luca said. His voice was a flat line of cold fury. "He put the mother on the table as a bargaining chip. He wants docs 4 and 5. Elena nodded. "It is the smart play. He thinks he has you in a box. He expects you to start a war with Sal, and he expects Lowell to be there to arrest you when you do. He is expecting a bullet," Luca said, looking out at the dark, sprawling port. "He's not expecting the truth." He turned to her. "I want a journalist, not corporate, someone independent, someone who cannot be bought." Elena did not hesitate. "Maya Ortiz. She runs a small investigative blog, but every major paper reads her. She is a bulldog. She hates corporate fraud, and she hates Lowell more." "Perfect. Build the package for her. Everything." His voice was quick, precise. The 2 payroll books, the transfers to the suspense, the full list of every employee Klein has robbed for the last year, the power grid schedule for the warehouse blackout, the fraudulent insurance claim he filed, the complete, unedited surveillance footage of Klein's security man handing cash to Sal Vitelli, and the donation records, every dollar that moved from Klein Cares to Lowell's campaign fund. Elena was already typing, but she paused. "Luca, this is not a surgical strike. This is a bomb. You are lighting up the entire network. Lowell, Klein, Sal. Even some of our own shipping arrangements might get caught in the blast. This burns the whole waterfront." "Let it burn," he said. "There is more," Elena pressed. "If Klein even suspects we are doing this before it goes live, he will crush Grace. He will have her arrested tomorrow morning. She will be the first one to burn. Luca, we cannot protect her if this goes wrong." "He thinks I will choose the port over her," Luca said. "We are going to move them. Now. Tonight." But the threat was already in motion. Grace was living in a state of suspended anxiety. There was food in the refrigerator, and the power was on. But the quiet, unmarked car that was parked 2 blocks down the street was a constant reminder that her life was no longer her own. She checked the mail, a daily ritual of dread. Among the junk mail, there was a plain white envelope, no name, no return address. Her fingers trembled as she opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Letters, cut from magazines, were pasted onto it. "We're E. Stop talking to the man from the port. Mothers who talk lose their children." Her blood turned to ice. She dropped the letter as if it were on fire. She ran inside, locking the deadbolt, her heart hammering against her ribs. She grabbed the black phone Luca had given her. He answered on the first ring. "He knows," she whispered, her voice choking. "He sent me a letter. He threatened Lily." "Stay inside." Luca's voice was tense, urgent. "Lock the doors. Do not open them for anyone. I am sending someone for you. They will be there in 10 minutes. Grace was paralyzed. She wanted to grab Lily and run, but there was nowhere to go. 10 minutes felt like 10 years. The next day, she felt like a prisoner in her own home. Lily, sensing her mother's terror, was quiet and withdrawn. Grace knew the girl needed air. She could not stay locked in this tiny apartment. She took her to the small neighborhood playground, a patch of sand and metal swings. Grace sat on a bench, watching Lily, her eyes scanning every car, every pedestrian. Her phone buzzed. It was Luca. She turned her back for just a moment, her hand over her other ear to block the street noise. "Luca, where are your people? I am at the park." "Grace, stay where you are," he commanded. "My car is 1 minute away." She turned back. The swing was empty. A raw, primal scream tore from her throat. "Lily!" She scanned the park. She saw her. Across the street, a woman in a dark coat was holding Lily's hand, pulling her toward a waiting sedan. The car door was open. "Get away from my daughter," Grace ran, her legs pumping, her lungs burning. An older woman, Mrs. Petrov from the next building, was gardening in her front yard. She saw the abduction. She saw the strange woman pulling the crying child. Mrs. Petrov did not hesitate. She grabbed her heavy garden rake and stood directly between the woman and the open car door, holding the rake like a spear. "What in God's name do you think you are doing, Mrs.?" Petrov yelled. "I know this child, you let her go." The woman in the coat looked at Grace sprinting toward them, then at the old woman with the rake. She shoved Mrs. Petrov to the ground, let go of Lily's hand, and jumped into the sedan. The car sped away, its tires screaming. Grace snatched Lily up, crushing the girl to her chest. She was sobbing, hyperventilating. Lily was crying. "I am sorry, Mommy. She said she had a puppy." A black sport utility vehicle pulled up, and Luca's security man jumped out. He looked pale, shaken. "She was gone in a second, ma'am. They must have been waiting. They were watching you." Luca himself arrived 2 minutes later. The mask was gone. His eyes were black ice. He did not say a word. He simply pointed to his car. "Pack a bag. You and Lily," he said, his voice terrifyingly calm. "You are not staying here another minute." The drive was silent. He did not take them to the city. He drove north, along the river, to a house she had never seen. It was isolated, hidden by trees, a beautiful modern structure of wood and glass. It was also a fortress. He showed them inside. It was warm. The kitchen was stocked. There was a bedroom for Lily filled with new toys. It was a beautiful, luxurious cage. Grace put Lily to bed. The girl fell asleep instantly. Exhausted by the terror, Grace walked back downstairs. Luca was standing by a floor-to-ceiling window, looking out at the dark, rushing water. "This is not protection," Grace said, her voice shaking with adrenaline and anger. "This is hiding. I will not hide forever. What did you do?" "Luca, who are they?" "They are the men who robbed you," he said, not turning. "The letter. The woman at the park. This is not about 6 weeks of pay. This is about you." He turned to face her. The space between them was a canyon of secrets. "Yes." He told her. He did not use the word mafia. He did not have to. "I run the port. Not the legitimate side, not all of it. Men like Klein and Salvatelli, they want what I control. They formed an alliance. Your paycheck." "Grace." "It was just a small piece of their plan. They were building a fund to finance a war against me." He watched her absorb this. "When I stepped in to help you, Klein saw a new opportunity. He saw you as leverage. He offered me a trade tonight." "A trade?" "He told me to walk away from the port. In exchange, he would stop trying to frame you for theft and give you back your job." The blood drained from her face. "He was going to frame me to get to you." "Yes, the woman at the park, the letter. That was to show me he was serious, that you and Lily were the price." She sank into a chair. She looked small, defeated. "So, you are what they say you are, a gangster." The word hung in the air, ugly and sharp. "I am," he said, "but I am not the man who threatened your child. I am not the man who stole your food, and I am not the man who is going to let them win." She looked up at him. The fear was still in her eyes, but underneath it, something else was hardening. Resolve. "You told me the truth," she said, her voice quiet. "They lied. You told the truth." The trust between them was not broken. It was fractured, and in that moment it reset into something stronger, something more real. "What happens now?" she asked. "Now," he said, his gaze fixed on her. "I am going to do what I should have done at the start. I am going to burn their entire world to the ground, not with guns, but with the truth. I am giving everything to that reporter, Maya Ortiz." Grace stood up, her fear replaced by a cold anger. "He will know it came from you." "Yes, and he will know I chose you over the port. He will try to destroy me, and he will try to destroy you. But you will be safe here." "No." Grace shook her head, and for the first time, he saw the steel in her that matched his own. "I am not hiding. This is my fight too. He used my name. He stole my wages. He threatened my daughter. I will not be safe hiding here. Luca, I will just be a target in a different location. The only way we are safe, is if I stand next to you, in the light." The call came just after midnight. The rain was not a drizzle. It was a biblical deluge, hammering the roof of the safe house, turning the river outside into a black, churning rapids. Luca had been watching the water, his conversation with Grace still hanging, unfinished, in the air. The black phone in his hand vibrated once. He answered. It was his head of security at the port. "Boss, it is Warehouse 4. It is on fire. The whole north end is going up." Luca's blood ran cold. "Sal, it has to be. Oh, he's not just setting a fire, boss. He's using accelerant, the insulation, the roofing. It is all plastic and tar. This is not a warning. This is sterilization. He's burning the evidence." Grace was standing at the top of the stairs, her face pale. She had heard. "Elena is in the car with Lily. They are secure," Luca said into the phone. "I'm on my way. I want your team at the perimeter." He hung up. He grabbed a heavy, waterproof jacket. "You stay here. Lock the door. Do not open it." "No." Grace walked down the stairs, her feet bare on the wooden floor. "I am going with you." "Do not be insane, Aunt. It is a war zone. Sal's men will be there, waiting." "You will not find it," she said, her voice shaking but resolute. "He is burning the evidence. You mean the payroll office. It is on the second floor over the main loading bay. I have seen the manager's office. There is a small, gray safe under his desk. That is where he kept the cash payouts for overtime. And that is where he kept the real logbook, the one he wrote in by hand." Luca stared at her. His men could smash their way in, but she knew the target. She was the map. He was at war, and she was holding the intelligence. "This is not a game, Grace. You could be killed." "If I stay here, I am just a target waiting for him to find me. You said it yourself. We stand in the light. If that book burns, my name is never cleared. He wins." He saw the steel in her. It was a mirror of his own. He made a decision. It was reckless, and it was right. "Fine." He grabbed a second jacket and threw it at her. "But you do exactly what I say. When I say run, you run." He spoke into a radio on his chest. "Elena, change of plans. I am bringing Grace. You and Lily will be our extraction. Park at the main gate. Keep the engine running. Lock the doors. You do not move for any reason. We will come to you." Elena's voice crackled back, tight with disapproval. "Copy. At the gate." Warehouse 4 was an apocalypse. The rain was hissing as it hit the flames, creating a cloud of greasy, toxic steam that choked the air. The fire was roaring, a hungry animal devouring the building from the inside out. Luca and his 4-man team moved through the shadows of the loading dock, avoiding the first responders who were still trying to get their hoses connected. "The office is this way," Grace yelled over the sound, pointing to a metal staircase on the side of the building. They moved fast. The air inside was a thick, black fog. The heat was immense, pressing against them. The fire suppression system was active, raining foam and water, making the concrete floor a treacherous slick of ice-cold water. Up here, Grace led them up the stairs, into the administrative hallway. The smoke was thicker. Luca's man kicked open the office door. The room was not yet on fire, but smoke poured from the ceiling vents. "There," Grace pointed. Under the manager's desk, half hidden by debris, was the small, gray safe. "You two," Luca commanded his men, "go to the security closet. Get the digital video recorder. The hard drive. Now." While one man used a pry bar and a small, high-temperature torch on the safe, Grace frantically scanned the smoke-filled room. Her eyes watered. She was coughing. "It should be here. It should be here." On top of a filing cabinet, she saw it, a simple, blue, 3-ring binder. Already starting to warp from the heat, the logs, she screamed. She grabbed it, clutching it to her chest. It was the handwritten schedule. The proof. The safe door popped open. Luca's man, his hands in heavy gloves, reached in and pulled out a thick, leather-bound ledger, the second set of books. At the same moment, the other man returned, holding the black box of the security system. "I have the drive." "Good, we are out." Now Luca yelled. They ran back into the hallway. The main warehouse below them was a vision of hell. A section of the roof had collapsed, sending a shower of sparks and molten tar onto the shelving units. "The side exit," Luca shouted, pointing to the end of the hall. They ran, Grace slipping on the wet floor. Luca grabbed her arm, holding her up. They turned the corner of a massive, dark aisle of frozen goods and stopped. Salvatore Salvatelli was standing there. He was flanked by 4 of his men, all holding pistols. They were not dressed for a fire. They were dressed for an execution. The firelight flickered in Sal's dead eyes. "Leave it all, Luca," Sal said. His voice was a low growl. "The books, the drive, you should have taken the deal." Guns were raised. Luca's men and Sal's men, a standoff in a burning building. Luca pushed Grace behind him. "You are destroying evidence, Sal," Luca said, his voice dangerously calm. He held the drive in his right hand. "I am cleaning house," Sal sneered. "Klein is a fool for writing things down. I'm a different kind of partner. Now give me the box." A sound split the air. It was not a gunshot, it was a groan. A high, shrieking tear of metal under stress. Luca looked up. The massive steel shelving unit above them, 10 stories of frozen fish and metal, was buckling from the heat. It happened in an instant. There was no time to think. There was only time to act. Luca roared Grace's name. He threw himself at her, not to shield her, but to move her. He shoved her with all his strength, pushing her clear of the fall line. The world ended. A tidal wave of steel and ice crashed down where they had been standing. A heavy crossbeam, white-hot, clipped Luca on its way down. It struck his left shoulder, a white, hot, and crushing pain that felt like his arm was being ripped from its socket. He was driven to one knee, a scream of agony torn from his throat. He was not crushed, but he was hit. Grace was safe, sprawled on the concrete. Sal's men were scattered. One was trapped under the edge of the shelving, screaming. Now Luca yelled to his team. The standoff exploded into a firefight. The warehouse echoed with the sound of gunfire, ricochets, and the roar of the fire. Luca grabbed Grace with his good right arm. "Run, run now!" He pulled her, dragging her toward the side exit, the pain in his shoulder so vast it was making his vision swim. They burst through the door, out into the driving, cold rain. His radio crackled. It was Elena. Her voice was pure panic. "Luca, we are pinned at the gate, a sedan. It is blocking us. They are armed. I cannot move. Lily is—" He saw it. Across the yards, his armored sport utility vehicle, and a black sedan parked sideways, blocking it in. Sal's men. They had been trapped. The fire was the bait. Elena and Lily were the targets. Luca ran, his useless left arm flopping, blood pouring down his sleeve. He ran toward his child. Before he was halfway across the yard, a dozen new lights flooded the scene, cutting through the smoke and the rain. Police cars, sirens screaming, they swarmed the main gate. But they did not move toward Sal's men. They moved toward him. The black sedan blocking Elena screeched its tires and sped off, vanishing into a side street. Sal's men were gone. District Attorney Lowell stepped out of the lead cruiser. He was wearing a long, immaculate black coat, and his face was set in a mask of triumph. Luca Romano Lowell shouted through a megaphone, "You are under arrest for arson, burglary, and attempted murder. Drop your weapons." Luca's men froze. He stopped, breathing heavily, the pain in his shoulder making him weave. Lowell walked toward him, his shoes splashing in the puddles. He saw Grace. "And you, Miss Carter, accomplice to theft. I see you have the stolen corporate documents." He nodded to 2 of his officers. "Cuff her." "No," Luca said, stepping in front of her. His good hand was still holding the hard drive. "Do not resist, Romano," Lowell sneered. It will only make it worse for her and her child. You are making a fatal mistake, Lowell. Stop. The voice was female, amplified, and furious. A blinding white light hit them, a broadcast camera. Maya Ortiz was standing on the roof of a news van that had pulled up behind the police. She was soaked to the skin, holding a microphone. She was live. District Attorney Lowell, she yelled, her voice cutting through the chaos. Why are you arresting a victim of wage theft? Why are you ignoring the men who just fled the scene? The men who set this fire? Lowell froze. He looked like a rat caught in a headlight. This is a live crime scene. Miss Ortiz, turn off that camera immediately. I will not. My site is live right now with documents showing a systemic payroll fraud scheme run by Victor Klein. I have evidence of insurance fraud related to this very warehouse. And you, Mr. Lowell, are arresting the victim while the building that holds all the evidence burns to the ground. A crowd of neighbors and port workers had gathered. Phones were out, dozens of them, all recording. Lowell was trapped in the spotlight. This is a complex matter. Lucas saw his one chance, the bet. He held up the items in his right hand, the singed logbook, the fire-damaged hard drive. He walked slowly, painfully, past the stunned police officers. He walked right past Lowell. He walked toward the news van. She's not a thief, Lucas said, his voice loud, carrying in the rain. She is a witness, and this is the proof. He stopped at the side of the van. He looked up at Maya Ortiz. Her eyes were wide, realizing what was happening. You want the truth, Miss Ortiz, he shouted. Here it is. Here is the hard drive from the security office. And here is the handwritten logbook. This is everything Klein and Lowell are trying to destroy. He held it up, and in front of the police, in front of the crowd, in front of the entire city watching live, he handed all of it to her. Maya took it, her hands shaking. Lowell was screaming. That is evidence, seize it. Arrest him. Arrest her. But his officers were not moving. They were looking at each other. They were looking at the cameras. They were looking at the crowd. They understood what was happening. They were not going to arrest a woman for wage theft or a man for handing evidence to the press on live television. Luca turned back to Lowell. The rain was washing the blood from his shoulder, turning the pavement at his feet pink. Your move, District Attorney, Luca said, his voice raw with pain. The whole city is watching you. The morning air was thick with the smell of wet ashes and ozone. By 9:00, the live stream from Maya Ortiz had been viewed over 500,000 times. The city was not just buzzing, it was furious. The city council chambers, usually a sleepy room for zoning disputes, was a media circus. Every local news affiliate was present, their Klieg lights adding an intense heat to the already packed room. The council members, sensing a defining political moment, had convened an emergency public hearing. Victor Klein arrived looking immaculate in a navy suit, flanked by 3 lawyers. He looked calm, almost bored, as if this were an inconvenient interruption. District Attorney Lowell was already seated, his face a blotchy, furious red. He refused to make eye contact with anyone. Luca Romano entered last. He wore a dark suit, his left arm now immobilized in a sleek black sling, a stark white patch of bandage visible at his collar. He looked less like a defendant and more like a predator surveying new territory. Elena, cool and composed, sat behind him. In the front row, reserved for witnesses, sat Grace Carter. She was not the desperate woman from the porch. She was not the terrified mother from the park. She wore a simple dark blouse. Her hair was pulled back. She looked at Klein with a steady, unnerving calm. We are here, the council president began, his voice amplified by the microphone, to address the deeply disturbing allegations raised by reporter Maya Ortiz concerning Klein Foods, the Ridgeview payroll, and the catastrophic fire at Warehouse 4. Victor Klein was invited to speak first. He walked to the podium, adjusted the microphone, and smiled, a practiced, reassuring expression. Thank you. Madam President, council members. Let me be clear. I am as appalled as you are. Klein Foods has always been a proud community partner. We are the victims here, victims of a sophisticated arson attack by a business rival, Luca Romano." He gestured toward Luca, who watched him without expression. "Mr. Romano has a documented history of violence and racketeering. He attempted to extort my company for favorable port contracts. When I refused, he staged this elaborate, theatrical attack. He coerced a disgruntled employee, Miss Carter, who was already under investigation for internal theft, to assist him. He set the fire, and he manufactured this fake evidence to destroy my reputation." He paused, letting the accusation settle. "As for the payroll issues, I have learned this morning that a single, rogue middle manager in our accounting department appears to have been running a complex embezzlement scheme. This manager, I am told, has unfortunately disappeared. We are cooperating fully with the police to find him and to rectify any and all wage discrepancies. This is a tragedy, but it is one of internal fraud, not corporate policy." It was brilliant. He blamed the missing manager for the theft and blamed Luca for the fire. He had created a perfect sealed narrative. The council president looked troubled. "Mr. Klein, those are serious accusations. But Miss, Ortiz presented documents suggesting a link between your foundation, Klein Cares, and District Attorney Lowell's re-election campaign." Lowell shot to his feet. "This is slander. My office is the victim of a smear campaign by a criminal element. I will not sit here and be—" "Then please, Mr. District Attorney, explain this." It was Elena. She had stood up, holding a small data drive. She walked to the council's technical station and plugged it into the main projector. "Victor Klein is correct about one thing," Elena said, her voice amplified. "Cutting through the room. He is a victim. He is a victim of his own meticulous, fraudulent accounting, which we happened to find." On the massive screens above the council, a diagram appeared. It was a flow chart. "This," Elena said, pointing, "is the Klein Cares Foundation account, and this is a transfer. 2 days after District Attorney Lowell dropped the food safety violations suit, a donation of $50,000 to a holding company, a shell corporation registered in Delaware. And here, 24 hours later, is a payment from that same corporation to another, a consulting firm owned by Mr. Lowell's wife." The room exploded in sound. Lowell was yelling. Klein's lawyers were shouting objections. Elena did not stop. It was not a donation. It was payment for services rendered, the service of ignoring food safety violations, the service of ignoring the systemic wage theft we have documented, the service of protecting Victor Klein's operations. It was, quite simply, money laundering. The council president slammed her gavel. "Order, order, Miss Carter. Will you please approach?" Grace walked to the podium. The room fell silent. She looked directly at Victor Klein. "My name is Grace Carter. I was a kitchen worker for Klein Foods. I am not a disgruntled employee. I am a desperate mother. For 6 weeks, Mr. Klein's company refused to pay me. They gave me a paycheck with a negative balance, claiming I owed them money for a broken freezer I never touched." Her voice was low, but every person in the room leaned forward to hear it. "Do you know what 72 hours is? It is the time it takes for a refrigerator to become completely empty. It is the time it takes for a 6-year-old girl to become so hungry that she tries to sell her new bicycle on the sidewalk." Klein's face, for the first time, lost its tan, and he looked gray. "I was not fired for theft," Grace continued, her voice gaining strength. "I was suspended for asking for my pay. I was told I had to sign a waiver, a document admitting responsibility for the broken freezer. Before they would review my case, I refused, so they starved me. That is not middle management. That is a corporate policy, and it is evil." She finished. There was no applause, just a stunned, heavy silence. District Attorney Lowell, seeing his entire career evaporating, made his final, desperate move. "She is lying," he shrieked. "She is a co-conspirator. This is all a fabrication, and I have had enough numbing." He pointed a shaking finger at Luca. "Chief, I am ordering you to arrest Luca Romano for the arson at Warehouse 4. The chief of police, a tall man who had been standing silently at the back of the room, now walked forward. He looked at Lowell, his face etched with contempt. "With all due respect, Mr. District Attorney, you are not ordering me to do anything. I am the chief prosecutor of this city." "Not for long," the chief said. "I watched the live broadcast last night. I saw your officers attempt to arrest the victim while you, sir, allowed the arsonist to flee. I will not involve my department in a cover-up. Given the clear and overwhelming conflict of interest, I am officially recusing my department and turning the entire investigation, including the fire, the payroll fraud, and your campaign finances, over to the Federal Bureau of Investigation." Lowell collapsed into his chair as if his strings had been cut. Victor Klein, however, was still looking at Luca. He was smiling, a small, cold smile. He had lost, but he believed Luca had lost too. The Federals would take everyone. Luca was not finished. He nodded to Elena. "Councilwoman," Luca said, his voice quiet, drawing the room's focus, "we have one final item. Mr. Klein was right. I did not set the fire, but I know who did." Elena hit the projector again. A new video file played. This was not surveillance footage. It was grainy, shot from a hidden angle, like a private camera. The timestamp was from 2 days prior. It showed the missing warehouse manager, the rogue employee, standing by a car. He was speaking to Sal Vitelli. Sal was handing him a heavy briefcase of cash. The audio was clear. "Burn everything," Sal's voice said on the tape. "Make sure the payroll office goes up first. Klein wants it all gone." The room was silent. "Mr. Klein is a meticulous man," Luca explained, addressing the room. "He never trusts his partners. He filmed his own co-conspirator, Sal Vitelli, ordering the arson that he, himself, had planned. He kept it as insurance, as blackmail, in case Sal ever turned on him. He just never expected us to find it in his private server." It was the final, fatal blow. Luca had not just beaten Klein, he had used Klein's own weapon to do it. The hearing was adjourned. The room erupted into chaos. Reporters swarmed Klein and Lowell. Federal agents were already securing the exits. In the confusion, Elena pulled Luca aside near the hallway. Her face was grim. She held a small, encrypted hard drive. "Luca, the Federals are here. They are going to seize everything. The servers from your office. Everything." He nodded. "Let them." "You do not understand," she said, her voice urgent, low. "The original server where I found Klein's video. It also contains the shipping manifests for Docks 6 and 7, our manifests, our specialized logistics." He understood immediately. His own gray market operations, his entire underworld business. "I have the backup of Klein's video right here," she whispered, holding up the drive. "We can destroy the original server. Right now. My team is waiting. The Federals will only have the copies Maya Ortiz has. It is enough to convict Klein and Sal, but all traces of us will be gone. We can walk away. Luca, clean." It was the choice. The one he had been given at the gala. But real this time. His kingdom or his integrity. He could go back to the shadows. Safe. He looked across the room, past the shouting reporters. He saw Grace. She was standing by the podium, watching him. She was not smiling. She was just watching, waiting to see what he would do. He looked back at Elena. He did not take the drive. "No," he said, "we give them everything. The original server, the manifests, all of it, the whole truth." "Luca, that is suicide," she breathed. "It is not," he said, "it is logistics." He turned and began to walk. The crowd parted. He walked out of the chamber, his shoulder throbbing, a deep ache that was both physical and existential. Grace met him in the marble hallway. The sound of the media circus faded behind them. They were alone. The space between them filled with the ghosts of the past 3 days. He stopped. She stood in front of him. She did not cry. She did not touch his injured arm. She simply reached out with one hand, her fingers lightly brushing the sleeve of his good arm. It was a touch that anchored him, a quiet acknowledgement of the price. "You chose the truth," she whispered. It was not a question. "We chose it," he answered. It was not a declaration of love. It was something heavier, a silent oath made in the wreckage of their old lives, a commitment to build something new. something that could stand in the light. The explosion of truth at the city council hearing sent fractures through the city's power structure faster than any bullet ever could. The immediate aftermath was swift and brutal. Victor Klein was suspended indefinitely from his position as Chief Executive Officer of Klein Foods. His assets frozen, pending a full federal investigation. District Attorney Lowell, facing a deluge of irrefutable evidence linking his campaign to the Klein Cares money laundering scheme, was forced to take a leave of absence. He was a dead man walking, and the federal prosecutors were already sharpening their knives. The most immediate, tangible victory belonged to Sal Vitelli. He was arrested before he could even get to the state line, indicted by an emergency grand jury not only for the arson of Warehouse 4, but for extortion and conspiracy. Luca's calculated gift of Klein's own insurance video had sealed Sal's fate. For Grace Carter, the victory was quieter, but it was total. 2 days after the hearing, a check was delivered to her by a federal marshal. It was not just the 6 weeks of back pay. It was that, plus penalties, interest, and a court-ordered settlement for distress. 6 weeks of starvation, it turned out, had a very high legal price. But the real change was structural. The assets seized from the fraudulent Klein Cares Foundation were rerouted. The city council, in a flurry of public repentance, established the Ridgeview Labor Support Fund, a dedicated resource for workers engaged in wage theft disputes. Grace's 72 hours of hunger had bought protection for thousands of others. The public narrative was cemented 3 days later. Maya Ortiz published her long-form investigation. It was not just a news report, it was a sprawling, damning indictment of the entire system. She connected the dots from Grace's empty refrigerator to Klein's insurance fraud, from the deliberate spoilage of food to the political protection bought from Lowell's office. The article, titled "The Price of a Paycheck," reframed the entire event. It was no longer a story about a sensational mafia boss. It was a story about systemic corporate theft and the failure of public office. Ridgeview, once a forgotten stretch of asphalt, became the national focal point for the debate on labor rights and the loopholes that allowed the wealthy to steal from the poor. Luca Romano, for his part, was engaged in his own form of demolition. His decision to hand over his own servers was an abdication. He had given the federal investigators the keys to his gray kingdom. He spent the following weeks in quiet, tense meetings, not with lawyers, but with his own capos and transport managers. He was systematically dismantling the parts of his operation that lived in the shadows. The specialized logistics at Docks 6 and 7 were closed. Contracts were terminated. Routes were rerouted to fully legitimate, bonded carriers. He was cooperating fully, pulling his own organization apart, piece by piece, and rebuilding it on a foundation that could withstand the light. This did not sit well with everyone. The old guard, men who had worked for his father, saw it as weakness. In a sterile conference room high above the port, his most senior lieutenant, an old man named Pietro, finally spoke the dissent that was simmering in the air. "You gave them the books, Luca, all of them," Pietro said, his voice a low gravel. "You handed our business, your father's business, to the government. For what? A kitchen worker, a child's bicycle?" The room was silent. Luca stood at the window, his left arm still bound in the black sling. He looked at the massive cranes moving containers in the sunlight. "You have gone soft," Pietro finished, spitting the word. Luca turned slowly. His eyes were not soft. They were harder, clearer than they had ever been. Soft, he repeated. "My father's way was hard. It was bullets and fire. It was predictable. This new way is harder. It requires a discipline you have never had to learn." He walked to the table, placing his good hand flat on the polished wood. "Victor Klein and Sal Vitelli are finished, one by the truth, the other by his own arrogance. District Attorney Lowell is finished. We are still standing. We are standing because we chose a different weapon." He looked at Pietro. "This organization has a new rule, a simple one. We do not touch the wages of working people. We do not profit from the food on their tables. We do not build our houses on the hunger of families in Ridgeview. That is Sal's business. That is Klein's business. It is not ours. Our business is logistics. Clean, fast, and better than everyone else. Adapt, or you are welcome to retire. No one in the room challenged him again. The glass house by the river was no longer a safe house. It had become a kitchen. Grace had refused to go back to her small apartment, but she also refused to live in the fortress as a guest. With Luca's quiet backing and the first seed money from the new Ridgeview Fund, she had transformed it. It was now the Ridgeview Community Kitchen, a place that provided hot, nutritious meals for third-shift workers and families caught in the same payroll limbo that had almost destroyed her. She ran it with the same efficiency she had used in the disaster relief kitchens, a calm, warm general in an army of volunteers. Lily, no longer quiet and fearful, was the unofficial cookie ambassador, handing out oatmeal raisin cookies to the port workers who stopped by after their shifts. The wound in Luca's shoulder healed slowly. It was a deep structural injury, the surgeon had said. The heavy beam had torn muscle and chipped bone. Physical therapy was a slow, agonizing process. The only part of his recovery that was not clinical was the changing of the dressings. Grace insisted on doing it herself. He would come to the kitchen late at night after the volunteers had left and Lily was asleep upstairs. He, a man who had never allowed anyone to see him weak, would sit bare-chested at the massive kitchen island, a place now smelling of bread and soup instead of fear. Grace was methodical, her touch professional yet gentle. She would clean the angry red lines of the sutures, her fingers moving with a nurse's precision. "You are favoring it too much," she said one night, her voice quiet as she applied fresh gauze. "The therapist said you have to use the muscles, or they will freeze." "The therapist is a sadist," Luca replied, his voice rough. He was not used to this. The proximity, the simple, non-transactional care. "You are just a bad patient," she countered. She smoothed the tape down on his shoulder. Her hand lingered for a second, a brief, warm pressure. "You know, you do not have to keep funding this. The fund is covering the food costs now." He looked at her. The kitchen lights were warm, softening the hard lines of his face. "I know. So why do you—" "Because," he said, meeting her gaze, "it is the first part of my business that I am actually proud of." The physical space between them, once a canyon of secrets, was now just a few inches of shared air, warm with steam from the industrial dishwasher. The distance was closing, naturally, without words. But the victory was not clean. Victor Klein was not in jail, and he was out on bail, his team of high-priced lawyers already on the offensive. They could not dispute the evidence, so they attacked the source. Whispers began in the financial papers, planted by Klein's public relations team. Rumors that Luca Romano had manipulated the media, staged the entire event, and framed Klein to seize control of his cold storage contracts. They painted Grace as a willing pawn, a girlfriend who had been bought. Elena brought him the reports. "They are trying to paint you as the puppet master. Luca, they are trying to turn your sacrifice into a simple act of criminal conspiracy." Luca looked at the headlines. He had expected this. The truth was not a single, clean bullet. It was a messy, protracted war. "Let them talk," he said. He knew Klein's lawyers were just buying time. He knew that men like Victor Klein, men who believed they were above the rules, did not just disappear. The shadow of what Klein represented, the cold corporate evil that used paperwork as a weapon, had not vanished. It had only receded, and it was waiting. The federal trial was not a trial. It was a foregone conclusion. Victor Klein, facing an avalanche of digital and physical evidence, did not risk a jury. His lawyers, stripped of their usual arrogance, negotiated a plea. Men like Victor Klein do not wear prison stripes. Their punishment is different. He was forced into a massive restitution, a financial penalty so large it effectively dismantled his personal empire. He was banned from serving as an officer or director of any publicly traded company for 10 years. It was a corporate death sentence. He was exiled, erased from the world of finance he had worshipped. District Attorney Lowell, however, had broken a public trust. His fall was less negotiated and more absolute. He was indicted by a federal grand jury, his political career over, his name a permanent fixture in the state's history of corruption. He was disbarred, stripped of his power, and left a hollowed-out man, facing a very real prison term. In the midst of the legal wreckage, Maya Ortiz accepted the State Journalism Award for her series, The Price of a Paycheck. She stood at a podium, not unlike the one at City Hall, and dedicated her award to Grace Carter and to every other worker whose name had been turned into a rounding error on a corporate ledger. The city, for a brief, shining moment, was forced to see its own reflection. Weeks later, on a clear, cool afternoon, Luca Romano pulled up to the house on the river. The community kitchen was in full swing, the air rich with the smell of roasting garlic and fresh bread. He was not driving a sedan. He was in a simple, dark sport utility vehicle. He went to the back and pulled out a bicycle. It was candy pink. It was a Serafina. It was identical to the one that had hung on the wall of his memory, the one he had bought for Sophia. Lily was on the porch, organizing crayons. She looked up when she heard his footsteps on the gravel. Her eyes went wide. Grace came to the door, wiping her hands on an apron. She saw the bike. She saw the look on Luca's face. She stopped. Luca wheeled the bike onto the porch. His shoulder, mostly healed, only gave a dull protest. He looked at Lily. "This one is different," he said, his voice quiet. Lily looked at her mother, her expression uncertain. "This one," Luca continued, "is not for sale." He tapped the handlebars. There was no cardboard tag tied to them with string. Instead, there was a small, gleaming chrome bell. Grace stepped closer. She saw the engraving, cut deep and clean into the metal. It was not a brand name. It was 3 words. "For play, for joy." Luca rang the bell. The sound was high, bright, and clear. It was a sound of pure, uncomplicated childhood. Lily looked at Grace, who was smiling, her eyes shining with tears she refused to let fall. Grace nodded. "Go on, baby," Grace whispered. "It is yours. It is just for you." Lily ran to the bike. She touched the streamers. She rang the bell again. Ding, ding, ding. A sound of pure delight that echoed out into the afternoon. The Ridgeview Community Kitchen was no longer just an emergency measure. It was an institution. Grace had expanded its operations, using the seed money from the new labor fund. Her new focus was the night shift. She had learned from her own time at Klein Foods that the third shift workers, the ones who kept the city moving while it slept, were the most overlooked. They were the transport drivers, the dock workers, the warehouse stockers. They subsisted on stale vending machine sandwiches and bitter, burnt coffee. So, at 2 a.m, the kitchen on the river was now a beacon of light. Grace and her team of volunteers served hot, nourishing stew, thick slices of bread, and fresh coffee to the men and women coming off the docks. The program was expensive. The city fund was generous, but it could not cover everything. Yet, the kitchen's bank account never ran dry. Every time the budget looked thin, a substantial, anonymous donation would appear, wired from a new, obscure logistics corporation based out of the port. Grace never asked Luca about it. He never mentioned it. It was another one of their silent, unspoken compacts. Inside the kitchen, hanging on the wall of the main dining area, was a simple black frame. Inside the frame, behind glass, was a piece of faded cardboard. The original "For Sale" sign, with Lily's crayon letters, was the first thing everyone saw when they came in for a hot meal. It was a reminder of what 72 hours could do. Ridgeview itself began to change. The transformation was slow, almost imperceptible, but on the side of the newly rebuilt, federally inspected Warehouse 4, a massive new billboard went up. It was not an advertisement for frozen seafood. It was a simple, deep blue sign, paid for by the new Port Authority. It read, "This facility believes labor has value." One evening, as the sun was setting, turning the industrial smog over the harbor into a blaze of orange and violet, Luca found Grace on the pier. She was watching the massive container ships, small cities of steel, being guided into their berths. The air was cool, tasting of salt and distant diesel. He stood beside her. His arm was out of the sling now, the pain reduced to a dull, permanent ache. It was a reminder of the price. They stood in silence for a long time, the silence of two people who no longer needed to fill the air with words. "You gave it all up," she said, her voice quiet, not looking at him. "Your father's business, the docks, everything they said you were." "I gave up a liability," he replied, watching a crane lift a container. "The old way was too expensive. It cost too much. The new business, it is cleaner, more stable." She turned to face him, the sea breeze pulling at her hair. "Is it, Luca, is it really?" He met her gaze. He saw the woman who had faced down Victor Klein, the mother who had run into the street for her child. No more lies. Grace, that is the new rule. It is not stable. It is harder. It is harder every day. But it is better. She studied his face for a long moment. She saw the man he had been, and the man he was struggling to become. He did not reach for her. He did not pull her close. He simply held out his right hand, palm up. It was not a grand gesture of passion. It was a simple, quiet offer. Grace looked at his hand, then at his eyes. She uncrossed her arms, and she placed her hand in his, their fingers interlaced. It was not a spark of electricity. It was the solid, satisfying click of a lock finding its key. They did not kiss. They just stood there on the pier, holding hands, as the city lights began to puncture the twilight. It was a promise, an oath of allegiance, sworn in silence. Later that night, Luca was in his new office. It was smaller than his old one, with more glass and less steel. He was reviewing shipping manifests for his newly legitimized logistics company. His private phone rang, the black phone, the one he now rarely used. He picked it up. He did not recognize the voice. It was smooth, with a cold, precise accent that did not belong to the waterfront. "Mr. Romano," the voice said, "we admire your recent house cleaning. It has made the port a much tidier place to do business. It has also left some outstanding accounts." "Who is this?" Luca asked. "Just a friend of Sal's associates, the ones you displaced. You seem to believe in paying debts, and we have found an old one, a blood debt, from your father's time. It has just come due." The line clicked dead. Luca stared at the phone. The shadows had not vanished. They had just been waiting. The old world was not done with him. A new threat was circling. He put the phone down. He felt the dull ache in his shoulder. He felt the threat. But he did not feel the cold fear he once had. He looked out his window, down on the street, in the pool of light from the kitchen. He saw a flash of pink. Lily on her new bike, laughing as Grace fixed her helmet. He heard the faint, bright ding-ding-ding of her bell. He knew he would face the new threat, but this time, he was not facing it alone. Thank you for listening to this story. I am curious. Where in the world are you listening from? Let me know in the comments so we can connect and share our thoughts. Please subscribe to my channel, Mafia Boss Stories. And like this video, if you enjoyed it, please also support us by hitting the hype button so this story can be heard by more people.